Hello and welcome to Melee's Turnwheel, the series that takes a retroactive look at the Fire Emblem series chapter by chapter. I'm your host, I'm a Melee Kirby, and today we are taking it back to chapters 23, 24, and Endgame of Fire Emblem, The Binding Blade. I am once again joined by the one and only super user person. How are you doing?
Hiya. Apparently there are more than one, that's why I'm number 4.
That's true. So how you doing today, Soup? You ready to talk about the ending to your favorite game?
Yes. It's actually one of my favorite endgames, which I've probably mentioned on the previous episode.
I think you have. I'm not sure though. This is your favorite game, right? I didn't
yeah.
that up. Okay.
It's it's definitely got its problems, but it's one of those ones I find endearing.
Sure. Yeah.
With
absolutely.
the jank.
Yeah, I feel you. I have plenty of those as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll talk. We're gonna. I guess spoiler alert. We're gonna do the wrap up episode. And you're gonna join me for that as well. At least that's currently the plan.
Yep.
So we'll have plenty of time to talk about the pros and cons of this game in that episode. But for now, we're gonna focus on the last few chapters of the game. Yeah. So, but before we get into that, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the Twitter so that I can read the answers to last episode's questions. Just give me one moment. Okay, so last episode I asked you guys, what is your favorite and or least favorite guided map in FE6? And I got a good variety of responses. Link to 86 says, probably 12X, because its gimmick is forgettable instead of actively annoying like all the others. Honorable mention to 21X, which isn't horrible and lets you do a funny by berserking the Brave Sword guy in the boss room, but it's still kind of a pain to get through. So I guess that's 12X and 21X are their favorites. At Bluto says, Melee, this is not a choice. 20X Sakai is objectively the worst map, period. This one's you.
Yes.
Actually, we'll talk. You can give your answer when we go through the other ones. At Cool Guy as F says, 12X is fun, there's incentive to play fast, and the fog isn't too intrusive. It also looks distinct. Sakai 20X is a nightmare that initially tortures the player with Wyvern Lords and Nomad Troopers and status staves, and then wastes their time with the worst gimmick in the game. At Tellius Bias says, there's 4 different guidons with the same gimmick of making it annoying to get to the throne if you don't warp skip. I don't know what my least favorite is between 14X, 16X, 20X Ilia, and 21X. And then we have 8X and 12X battling for the boring but not obnoxious award. And then finally, at Admiral Spike says, 12X legit might be the best because it's the easiest. 16X is probably the most interesting, but it's also annoying, so I'd rather warp skip. Both 20Xs suck, but 14X probably has the least merit to interact with it of almost any map in the series. So, obviously there's a lot of responses, and I was honestly surprised by how varied they were. I was kind of expecting pretty much all people to answer with 20X to K or maybe one of the other ones. But no, I think it just goes to show that all of them are
you kind of have your camp of bad versus the camp of boring, but not ending your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I can see what you wrote here, but why don't you go ahead and tell us what you think is the best or worst?
I actually need to recall my response because I think that was a little while ago, but essentially I'm actually going to just go ahead and put my foot down and say the best one is 8X, just because the gimmick is pretty easy to get around, and it pretty much just gives me a hallway to train Lilina on right after you get her.
You're valid.
Heading aside, he's if you have Ricker, he's not that bad. Otherwise, it is kind of interesting to have him as a benchmark for where you need to be by the end of that kind of arc of the game, being chapter 1 through 8.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just say that's the best one.
Sure.
Worst one's genuinely competitive, but 20X is. Yeah, I think my exact words were whoever designed 21X should be fired out of a cannon into the sun. Or SK-20X, that is.
Yeah. He said they're a menace to modern society
Yeah,
and should be
menace.
exiled.
Oh, yes. They should be
You're
exiled to the moon.
You're completely valid for that. I think 20X. So here's the thing. 20X on normal mode isn't really that bad. If you know that the gimmick's there, because you can just kill the enemies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from the perspective of having played normal mode, I actually don't know that I would say 20X is my least favorite.
20X is workable both if you're playing normal mode and hard mode, just because you can with enough determination you can just warp skip it and just assume that either the top or bottom rightmost huts are the one that's gonna be in, but it's just the idea of this map is just genuinely offensive.
Yeah. It's very conceptually awful. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think my personal least favorite is probably 16X.
Yeah.
Just because I think every other one has at least one thing that I can point to and say, I don't like what they did here, but I think it's interesting. I think it's a cool idea, and it changes how I engage with the map. 16X is just basically a straight fucking line.
Yeah.
Technically you can split your army, but it's just
The gimmick's also pretty offensive on that map too, just because it's the same idea as the fire tiles in in 8X, where they're oh, there's a variable that can hurt your units if you're not careful, hurt you or the enemy units if either aren't careful. But in I guess 12X also has it with the poison, but
mm-hmm.
the thing is the arrows can come out of anywhere, so it's literally just a mechanic that can kill you if it wants, which I imagine if you're not using save states has got to be the worst of all of them.
Yeah, no, I think it's if you get screwed by that, then I think that's would completely understand why someone would rank it as one of their least favorite maps in the entire series.
Kind of toxic for a strategy game to just have a variable that can kill you without being able to plan around it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. At least in 8X you can see where the fire tiles are too. You don't have any idea where the arrows are going to come from. Yeah, I think what's interesting is that I think the debate for a lot of people with the guided maps is frustrating versus boring, and the ones that are boring rather than frustrating are the better ones. The thing about normal mode is that it's so easy that none of them are particularly frustrating. Even some of the more obnoxious ones, like 20X Sakai, or there's one with the guy with the berserk staff in the middle. I think it's 20X Ilya. Those maps are not they don't really have much going on, and they're not that difficult to get through. So I think for me, as someone who does play normal mode pretty much exclusively, I think that the boring ones are actually tend to be my least favorite. Just because the ones that would be frustrating on hard mode are just kind of a little bit more engaging for me.
Yeah, I mean, I get there is an allure to, even on hard mode, there is an allure to being able to beat a really hard map, and the satisfaction that comes out of it. It's just I feel some of those later ones genuinely do not feel fair with their gimmicks.
That's understandable. I completely agree. With that said, I think my favorite is probably one of the most unfair ones, which is 21X, just because I love the fucking concept of Manicheets popping out of chests so much. I think that's such a cool, funny gimmick with a lot of potential that was unfortunately not even close to realized in that map, but I think conceptually it's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that one's kind of a better version of what's happening in 20X, because you just decide to not engage with it if you want.
Yeah.
But you could get greedy and be oh, is this going to be a good item or a dragon? But The problem is, like, the reward is, like, not good enough for that risk.
Yeah, absolutely. I was suggesting when I talked about that chapter last episode, I said that maybe if they had put stat boosters in the chests and then like shuffled the chests
Yeah.
every time you play the map, so there's still an element of randomness, but you know that if you open all the chests, you're still going to get some good rewards.
Yeah, if it was stat boosters, that would be pretty good.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, thanks for everybody who responded to the question, and I think okay, so next episode is the last one. So as always, we're gonna do the traditional last episode question, which is, who is your favorite character in Fire Emblem: The Binding Blade? Go ahead and leave your answers at I'm a Melee Kirby or by emailing turnwheelpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, with that out of the way, I think we can go ahead and get started. If Soup, unless you have anything else you wanted to add before we go.
I think I'm good.
All right, great. In that case, let's go ahead and start with Chapter 23, which is called Ghosts of Burn.
Ooh.
Ooh. So after Zephiel is defeated, Burn officially, formally surrenders, but Roy is not quite done yet. The war is over, but Roy still has a little bit of work to do because he needs to find the demon dragon who is at the Dragon Sanctuary. What's the place called?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Dragon Shrine, Dragon Sanctuary.
Mm-hmm. And in his way, waiting for him to arrive, is Brunya, the last remaining Wyvern General. Murdoch and, of course, Narshan are both gone. Brunya is the only one left. And it's kind of weird that if you don't get the good ending, then she just doesn't have any kind of resolution. I don't know.
He's chilling.
She's just chilling. You think she's just standing there until...
He's probably, like, at that gate just, like, forever. I don't know.
Just sits there and starves to death.
Yeah. Playing Uno with Adun and John.
Speaking of Jan, the first thing we see after we cut away from the opening narration is Brunya speaking with Jan, basically just kind of saying, okay, well, what are you going to do next? Brunya says that she's going to fight, and that she doesn't feel like she can just let things go without a fight. She admits that her chances of winning are very small, but she's going to fight anyway. And Jan can't understand that kind of sentimentality, so he just kind of makes fun of her and walks away. She talks to one of her soldiers, who apparently was supposed to relay the message that nobody was going to be forced to stay. If they left, there would be no repercussions, and that they're almost certainly going to lose, so don't feel like you have to fight. And apparently most of the troops decided to stay regardless, which she's very happy about. However, she then also says that anybody who has children or elderly parents has to leave. You cannot fight if you have any form of dependence, which I think is a nice little... I think this whole sequence is kind of cool. It shows how loyal the Burn troops are. It's really the only time in the game that they get any level of humanization. And Brunya herself obviously has a good moment here where she understands that the loyalty of the troops is going to end up hurting a lot of people, so she gives them an order to run away if they have anyone who's depending on them. I don't know. I think it's cool.
Yeah, luckily dark mages do not fuck, so there are plenty of them in this map still.
Yeah, there's no children. I mean, they're all probably emotionless husks, as we see in FE7.
Yes.
So
Canas is the exception for being the only dark mage that fucks.
Absolutely true. And it shows because his son is an anima mage, so he probably has.
Yes.
He's probably like at least half anima mage in there.
Yeah, he touched too much grass to be a dark mage.
Does Canas here? I'm curious now. I got to check this. What is Canas's affinity?
In like the support affinity?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because
probably
that's
dark.
It is anima. Okay, I was wondering if he had an anima affinity. That's funny. But yeah. Anyway, that's when the map starts. Roy, I guess Roy tried to get them to surrender. Saying there will be no your safety is guaranteed if you surrender. You don't have to fight us. But they said no. And Guinevere's there. Guinevere says that she wants to be on the front lines to see how, she feels like she's responsible for this as well, and she wants to see her subjects kind of, she owes it to her subjects to kind of be out here and looking them in the eye and all that stuff. I was really hoping that she would join the army here. I mentioned this to you last night while we were talking about this map. She is there are a few characters in this game who are, maybe we could talk about this a little bit more next time, but they're trial map characters. So later on, after you beat the game, I think, do you have to beat it like multiple times?
I don't know. I've never played the trial maps. I think you just, it might be you have to, like, beat the game a certain amount of times for, like, to unlock all of them. Mm-hmm. But I'm pretty sure you at least get some for beating the game.
Okay, I will. I'll look into that a little bit more. We can talk more about it next time. But basically, in those trial maps, they're basically just bonus extra maps where you can play as certain characters who are not playable in the main story. So you got Hector, who's a general. I think Ellawood is a paladin. There might be a couple others, but the main one that's relevant for our purposes is Guinevere.
Yeah, I think the main other ones are like the Wyvern General, Sonashin, Brunya, and Murdoch, and then Zephiel, who has his unique class.
Yes. And then, as I was mentioning, there's a Guinevere is one of the playable characters, and she actually has a kind of unique class. She's a sage, but she can use light magic, which is not something that we've seen again in the series until FE8, I think, has sages that can use light magic, but otherwise it's a pretty unique class, and she has Data as a playable character. They do a whole cutscene setting up how she wants to fight on the front lines, or she wants to be on the front lines to see her subjects, and nothing. I just think it would have been cool if she had joined here.
Yeah. I think I mentioned to you, like, it'd like generally be nice if you had like an out of the box like Areola user. In general, I think the Endgame this game in general is kind of like, after my most recent playthrough, one thing I noticed, like, you don't really have that many out of the box legendary weapon users. The only one you have is the character that's going to join this map, and he joins with S-rank swords, which, like, very cool. Everyone has S-rank swords. That's all anyone's been using. Yeah. So it'd be nice if you had like an out of the box like S-rank, someone to out of the box use like Armads or like Apocalypse or Areola. Mm-hmm. So she'd fit that role. Yeah. Story-wise, I mean, I feel like it would probably make more sense for her to join at 22, but I can kind of see like them being able to write around like, oh, now that I'm the queen of the ruler of Bern, then I gotta clean up the country's mess or something.
Yeah.
You probably do something with that.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it would beg the question of if she had like endgame level stats, why did she not join sooner? But I'm sure, again, like you said, I'm sure that they can write around it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's where the map begins. And there are a lot of enemies on this map, and especially on hard mode, there are a lot of strong enemies. There's wyverns, obviously. This is a chapter where you're fighting Burn. There's going to be wyverns. There's a bunch of ballista in the center of the map that have really long ranges. So if you have flyers or even just like squishy units like your dancer or some of your healers, it can be very tricky making sure that they're out of that ballista range. Thankfully, if you have a flyer that has the Delphi shield, you can go and clean those up pretty easily. But then they have to contend with the wyverns. It's tricky. It's fun. I like this map quite a bit. To be honest, on normal mode, but on hard mode, I think it's maybe a little bit too difficult for its own good.
I don't really feel that. I like this map. I mean, it's got like a whole bunch of different ways to approach it. A lot of like, I think the main problem is that it has a lot of keep out, especially in the top around like where Branya is held up. So you mentioned like, oh, if you have a flyer with a Delphi shield and maybe like you gave him some boot, like you invested in Milady, you can just have her fly up and like take out those ballista, like, and that works good. But then you also have to deal with the staff druids at the top that
Yes.
can berserk you, and I kind of noticed in like my most recent hard mode one is like you kind of actually like it feels like you have a lot of options to deal with staffs, but you really don't. Especially compared to like Thracia, the game before, where you have a whole bunch of tools. Kind of feels like you're kind of limited in how you can actually get in on like Brenya up top.
Yeah.
Like the obvious answer would be like, oh, I could hit him with silence, but silence is kind of worthless because the hit rate is based on res, and druids are gonna have a ton of res, so you can't really silence them.
Sleep
like you can
also.
you can't sleep them. You could probably berserk the sniper or the Manakite, I think, or one of the
That could be
wyverns.
cool.
But that's kind of unreliable on which one they actually hit. So either that or just like rush them, but like they have infinity range, so it's just kind of annoying to get in on those druids at the top, and that's kind of like my main gripe in the map is like kind of your most reliable option is to just tank their status staves and then just like restore weight, which eats up turns.
Yeah, it's boring. That's what I ended up doing, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a little bit dull. I think the beginning sections of this map are fun. I like dealing with the ballista. I like dealing with the wyverns and some of the miscellaneous enemies. But I think once you start to clear out and you have to make that approach up top, I think that's where it really starts to slow down to a crawl. Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
A lot of Manicheets here. Some of the I think this might be the most Manicheets we've seen in a single chapter up to this point. There's at least like I want to say there's like 4 or 5, maybe less. I don't know.
I think like right on the map, maybe.
What do you mean?
I mean like when you first spawn. Actually, yeah, I was thinking there were quite a few in like the Zephiel chapter. Or in theory, you probably could get more on 21X.
That's true.
If the chests roll bad.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's fair. But yeah, so there's there's
there
quite
aren't
a
that
few.
many chests. I think. Never mind.
There's quite a few Manicheets, is my point, and there's they hit hard. I mean, they've always hit hard. They've always been really tanky. You can take them out with magic, and of course now technically you don't really have to conserve your legendary weapon uses anymore, so they're pretty easy to deal with. Although you're gonna want to have at least a fair number of legendary weapons to use for the next chapter.
Yep.
So you can't go crazy with them, but. Anyway, early on in the map, we get a quick scene with Corel that kind of just gives a hint about how he's recruited. He doesn't say like any of the characters' names or anything. He mentions his sister Carla, not knowing how she's doing and hoping that her daughter and husband are okay. And that's supposed to be your hint. I don't know if I think Fur and Bartray maybe had a conversation about Carla at some point, but I don't know. It's a little subtle. I actually, if you visit with somebody who's not Fur or Bartray, then he might mention them. I'm not sure. I didn't check.
I did do that because I wasn't really using either of them and didn't really care about Corel. But I forgot what he actually said. I think he was pretty much just like, "Leave me alone, get out of here,
get the fuck out of here."
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can recruit him by going to the village with either Fur or Bartray. I don't know the Bartray conversation. I imagine it's kind of funny because Bartray is just a pretty funny character in this game, I would say. The fur one was pretty cool. She and Carell talk a little bit about like how she joined the war, and you know, she's a little bit worried that she didn't make the right choice. And Carell says, "A path you chose on your own is never wrong," which I think is a good line. I think it's also, I've read a few Carell supports at this point, and I think it's kind of funny how they keep being like, "Oh, Carell is this cool like legendary figure who's so wise and experienced," and then he in all of his supports he like says like two things and they're like trite nonsense. I think that this is probably the most insight I've gotten into his character from reading any of those supports. So I don't know. I thought it was worth mentioning. It's a good line.
All yeah, right. I mean, I imagine at this point they probably wouldn't have put too much effort into his supports.
I mean, yeah, because he's only around like, for for 2 chapters practically.
Can you even? I'm pretty sure there are limits. Can you? I mean, you wouldn't be able to get past like a B support, I don't think.
I think you can. I mean, technically, there's nothing stopping you from grinding supports in Idune's map because it is considered a different map.
I guess.
But yeah, it's like not, and he does have A supports. I do know that. So
okay.
I mean, that's the only explanation.
You gotta get him somehow, I guess.
Yeah. Carell certainly is a character in Fire Emblem: The Binding Blade. Like you said, he has S swords out of the gate, which is not particularly unique. Most characters that you've been using at this point that have multiple weapon types are probably that can use swords as one of their weapon types is probably gonna have S swords. You obviously have Rutger. Any like if you're using Echidna or what's the other one? Deke. You know. So there are a lot of really good sword units in this game, but I suppose it's certainly it's welcome. You know, if you're playing like an Iron Man run and maybe some of your characters died, it's good to have an option.
He's fine filler at this point.
Yeah. The most interesting thing about him, of course, is that he's level 19 promoted, and so obviously he can't grow any more than 1 level. So to make it so that he could get, you know, make good use out of that 1 level up, they gave him really, really high growth rates. He has over 100 in every single growth rate, and that's fine. You know, in vanilla, it doesn't really matter because he just levels up once, he gets a couple of stats, and then his stats are still pretty, you know, middle of the road, but they're not bad. And then and you just finish the game. It doesn't really matter. But if you're playing a randomizer, in particular, a reverse recruitment randomizer where Carell is your lord, and he starts off with fucking garbage stats because I'm pretty sure they de-level based on those growth rates. So he's going to have like 0 strength, 0 skill, 0 speed, you know, like et cetera, et cetera. But as soon as you get a couple levels on him, he's going to be really, really good. He's going to cap everything. It's fun. It's a nice little treat, I guess. If you're ever playing a randomizer of FE6. Consider doing reverse recruitment because it's a good time.
Yeah, his main claim to fame is just like his stupid stat bros, which aren't really like. I mean, it doesn't really matter because he only has 1 level to get, but it's funny that in the 1 level he can get like pretty much everything he has is over 100%. So like he could in any stat get +2 instead of +1.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. Okay, and then yeah, you move your guys up. You go fight Brunya. Brunya is a little bit of a scary customer. She has bolting, so she can hit you from long range, and she is pretty strong. She has high magic, high defense, high res. So killing her can be tricky. She's surrounded by an entourage of guys that we had a very fun time with last night, didn't we, Soup?
Yes. You always have a very fun time with these guys.
I was pussyfooting around trying to decide how to approach, and Soup was like, they don't move. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Are you sure? And he was like, yeah. And he was right. I got up close to them. They didn't move. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I just I ran in full force. I killed a couple of them, but I couldn't kill all of them. I didn't have enough guys that had enough movement to make it there. And then so I had killed a couple of them. And then I was like, well, if they don't move, then I'm still fine. And then they moved. So I guess they do move after you start attacking them. But they didn't attack me, which is weird because I absolutely would have died if they if they had attacked me. I don't know what that's about. That's some weird AI quirk that fuck if I know, man.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've played this map, like, multiple times recently, like, through my, like, draft and hard mode run, and, like, I've never seen these guys move. Apparently, I guess checking the wiki after, like, they can... The Eastern... Actually, I'm not sure if that's the same guy. So, I guess they can if you, like, provoke them, like, and not kind of attack, like, really, like, super... They can only, like, move if you're, like, super close to them. But, like, you can, like, go... It's okay to, like, go in their range.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, this would, like, be really terrible, I guess.
Yeah, no.
Well, I guess you could probably just, like, bait them out, so I'm not sure if it'd actually be better or worse if they moved in on you.
Well, it's hard to bait them out because you got strong magic attackers and strong physical attackers and also Brunya's bolting. So it could be tricky. If they moved. But
I mean, you can definitely just get in, like, one druid's range and then kind of bait them out one by one.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, Brunya, especially on normal mode, Brunya is not a particularly difficult boss, so you just kill her. I think I had Kirill kill her. I don't think he even got a level up from this map, but I was thinking maybe I could get him a level up, just to get him those funny, silly growths. But unfortunately, I probably should have brought him instead of Fur because he was like way better than my Fur. But you know, whatever. Fur still killed Manakete, so I guess it was fine. All right. Oh, and then I spent a shitload of turns grinding Ellen's grinding Ellen's light rank. I've been trying this entire game to get her up to S light because it takes fucking forever in this game to grind weapon rank intentionally. So getting her up to S light took me like a ton of light tomes and like half the game and a lot of turns of just like of feeding her kills. Yeah, it was not fun. It wasn't worth it. I would not do this again, except I almost certainly will at some point if I play this game again. But
yeah, that's part of the reason why Guinevere would be nice. It's like kind of an out of the box Areola user because it's a pain to grind your staff bots up from rank E rank light, especially when they are better served as like staff bots.
Yeah.
Like, I guess Yoder could do it, but he also joins very close to this map, or very close to the endgame.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you only have, like, a handful of chapters to get him, like, 50 kills. I guess 50 attacks, not kills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes a little while. So. Alright. Yeah, you capture the throne, and Roy decides to move into the Dragon Sanctuary and go from there. Is there anything else you had to say about this map? I know that you weren't super. You're not here for 23.
Yeah, it's a map. It's pretty solid. Just like my main, I mentioned my main gripe with this map. I think the only thing I have to say is that I kind of feel like there's like an engage map that reminds me of this, like the one I think like 23, also 23 in Engage, the one where you fight the last of the hounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is like, I think it's like a similar idea where there's like kind of like two paths separated by like a lake, kind of, since it's in a volcano. Yeah. I think that one's better by virtue of not having the little the like point you gotta break through, and also having a lot more options to get around it.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that kind of, I think, illustrates like kind of the potential this map has, but it does not, maybe not the best execution.
Yeah, fair enough. I think if it had found a way to consistently make it interesting, like that final stretch, I think if they had made it interesting.
Yeah, kind of consistently, like, keep you moving.
Yeah, but you know, it is what it is. It's not a phenomenal map, but it's not that bad either, I would say.
Yep.
Okay, we can move on now to chapter 24, which is called Legends and Lies. So, there's a lot of notes I took here about the story. In fact, I actually have no notes here about the gameplay. So I think what we should do is we should just talk a little bit about the gameplay, and then spend the entire rest of the time talking about the story.
Sure.
So,
yeah, that works because I have a lot to say about the gameplay.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, I mean, do you want to give us a breakdown of how the chapter goes?
So essentially, you start off, and you see like, oh, very cool. The throne is very close to me. What a short map.
Then you move left.
And you're
left
you're clueless, and like you move the cursor a little bit up, and it's like, wait, it keeps going and going and going. So essentially, the way this map works is that you essentially just get like a throne room that you walk over to. Like you pretty much have a hallway that you go over to. And the only enemies you fight on this map are enemy Manichates. So you're pretty much just going through and like killing these dragons. You pretty much fight like a room of 3 of them, and then move on to the next room. The next room opens up after you seize the throne. You get like after that you get like 4 Manichates per room. So gameplay wise, it's pretty much just a walking simulator. It's definitely not the most interesting map in the world, but like I said, this is probably one of my favorite endgame maps, just because I think it's like a really good, like it's essentially the way I would describe it is kind of like the victory lap for this game. Like, I think I think it's really fun that you essentially spend most of the game like kind of scrapping, struggling. And it's just kind of cathartic at the end to just like kind of run around and pretty much just like wipe these dragons. Like you can beat them pretty easily, especially if you've been conserving your legendary weapon uses. So it kind of feels like a nice like this is kind of what you've been working towards, is being able to just kind of like bowl this map over. It's kind of like a cathartic it's kind of like the end point of like playing, like the reward for playing this game good is being able to just kind of like breeze through this map, and I think that it does a good job of that. It also like the hallway thing, like it's kind of boring, but it also really rewards you for being able to like get a whole bunch of boots on your army. So that way they can keep up. Like the only real challenge is just making sure that you're progressing at a good pace, because at a certain point, Manichates will start spawning behind you. Which they're about as strong as the rest of them. So they're not super hard to take out. But if you get caught off guard and like one of your squishy units or like your staff bot or someone, like a support is in the back, they are liable to die. The Manichates in general are like super slow. They don't have a ton of res. They have a good amount of defense, but it doesn't really matter because you have effective, like 3 times effective weaponry, so you're just kind of shredding them anyway. So like you're probably guaranteed to like double and like shred like 1 round these guys. But they are like super accurate and do hit real hard, so you want to have the initiative on them. So like essentially being able to conserve your resources and be able to kind of just go through and wipe out a whole room at once is kind of like the strategy. You don't really want to enemy phase a bunch of them, so it kind of feels like a nice map where you kind of like there's a lot of like initiative on player phase, which I like.
Yeah, it's a very player phase focused map. Yep. I think it strikes this nice balance between being, like you said, kind of a cathartic victory lap, while also making sure that you can't get too sloppy, because most of your characters aren't going to be able to survive multiple hits. The only character that I have, I think Gonzalez was the only character that I brought that could live like more than 1 hit. He could survive like 3 because he's a fucking tank. But
yeah, and he also probably has a ton of HP.
yeah, exactly. So but pretty much everybody else, the Manicheets are going to kill in at most 2 hits, sometimes even 1. I think some of them might have even one-shot Roy because I have a pretty undertrained Roy, but yeah.
I think you can make the point that like they'll probably die in 2 hits, but there's also like 2 Manicheets that move at you per room. So.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe almost a little bit too easy, but I think that's fine. I kind of prefer like that to say, I guess like Radiant Dawn Tower, which might be. And I know you really like that game. So
watch what you say. Soon.
I don't want to go too hard on it.
No, I get what you mean though.
But that's definitely more in the camp of like actually like really like challenge. Like it's more in the camp of like you gotta build to make that. You gotta like kind of have good strategy to make it through that versus this, which is like you probably get through it. You can probably scrap through it if even with like kind of poor strategy, but like good strategy makes this map a lot more fun, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, yeah, it's that's really all there is to say. I think. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward map. I don't think it's bad. I think when you take it in the context of what it's trying to go for, I think that its more boring elements can be kind of overlooked. It's not the most exciting endgame, but I think if I really want to get into the nitty gritty, I guess I could say that maybe that's partially intentional because as you're kind of progressing through the map and learning more about the story, you're not supposed to be loving the fact that you're just mowing through, dozens of these guys. But that's I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So,
yeah. And also it'd probably be annoying on the original hardware. The one time they actually consider like, oh, they probably don't want to reset after like going through 3 cutscenes.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this. I probably have, and I probably will many other times forget that I have. But it's really impressive to me that from such an early stage, I think like FE3 or FE4, Fire Emblem got the fucking memo that you should be able to skip all the cutscenes. Because a lot of game series did not learn that for a very long time, and still haven't. So, thanks, Fire Emblem.
Yes.
But yes, so that's the gameplay. Pretty straightforward and has its dull moments, but I think Cathartic Victory Lap is really the best way to put it, as you did. So it's cool. I enjoy it. So now let's talk about the story. So the context of what we're seeing here is that Roy has entered the Dragon Sanctuary and he encounters Jan or John, whatever his name is, doesn't really matter. And Jan is telling him the story of the Scouring. He's giving Roy the full truth about the Scouring because Roy is starting to feel like maybe his story isn't entirely accurate or complete, and he wants to learn more. He really wants to know about the situation. And Jan's a very detached guy. I mean, as I mentioned last time, well, I should probably explain who Jan is first. Jan is a dragon. He is the last, possibly, I mean, outside of Arcadia, he is the last real dragon in the world, possibly. He is, because all the other dragons you've been fighting are war dragons. They are mindless killing machines, and then Idun herself is something of a mindless killing machine in that sense as well. So Jan is like the last real dragon. He's been in the Dragon Sanctuary for since the Scouring, he says, so for 1,000 years. And when Roy encounters him, he kind of says, well, I don't have any reason to not tell you what's going on, but I think it would be fun if I messed with you a little bit. So if you can make it further into the temple, I will tell you a little bit of the story every time you make it a little bit further. And so as you're cutting through these Manicheets, one by one and capturing all of the rooms, Roy is learning more and more about the history of the world and coming to his own conclusions, which I think is really interesting. So we're going to go through beat by beat and kind of talk a little bit about... I didn't separate them by cutscene, So I guess we'll just kind of go roughly in order and stop anytime that I think there's something interesting to talk about, or Soup thinks that there's something interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's just like one cutscene that they split into like six that they drip feed you.
Yeah.
Along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it starts off with Jan explaining the concept of war dragons. I think we've kind of already gotten a little bit of an explanation of what war dragons are, but Jan kind of gives that a full breakdown, that they're mindless killing machines. They're created by the demon dragon for war and nothing else. They don't have emotions. Jan is also pretty detached and is does not have a lot of emotions himself, but he does have some, and he has like a sense of self, I guess, is maybe the better way to put it, rather than emotions. He has a sense of identity. He explains that the demon dragon is nothing but a tool that's used. The demon dragon was not their leader, as a lot of the humans speculated, but rather the demon dragon was created by them, the other dragons, taking a divine dragon, which is the strongest type of dragon, and destroying its soul to make it into a tool of war, and causing it to lose any sense of identity. I think they explained that divine dragons, that any divine dragon could do this, but because divine dragons, and I guess, some dragons in general have, some feelings, and they, a real divine dragon would not do this. And if it did, it would have some level of hesitation that would make it weaker and wouldn't allow it to be as effective as it could be. So they had to destroy the divine dragon's soul. And in doing so, they created a Dune. They found a divine dragon and crushed its soul, and that is a Dune.
Essentially what John says is like, oh, we were trying to ask the divine dragons, they were like, hell no, and then they just fucked off so that they would stop asking them or something.
Yeah.
I don't think he goes into too much detail on why they actually leave. Like, if it was because of, like, they were, like, aware that the scouring was going to happen, like, there was tension between humans, or if they were just, like, they were just bugging them too much.
Well, this is while the scouring was already happening.
Okay. So, I guess it's implied that they left because of the scouring. Like, to get away, to, escape it, more or less.
Yeah, so what he says is that the timeline of events here is kind of the scouring starts, and dragons are way stronger than humans, but humans are just so plentiful, and they just keep fucking. So there's just more and more and more and more of them. So in order to combat their numbers, the remaining dragons, the lower dragons, I guess, go to the divine dragons and say, hey, please help us. We have this plan. And the divine dragons said, it absolutely not. It's not worth winning. They didn't say this part. I'm speculating a little bit, but they're saying this plan is not worth winning with. It's like it's a terrible plan. It's monstrous, and you shouldn't do it. And then I guess the divine dragons left. Jan doesn't know for sure, but Jan speculates that it's because they were worried that eventually they were going to stop asking and just like force them to do it. So they ran away.
I mean,
and they were right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it is not explained, however, how a Dune was there. I think a Dune maybe was just left behind by accident, or maybe on purpose.
I think, I'm not sure if this text explicitly says it, but I think the implication is that she essentially turned back because, like, she turned back for something. Like, it was implied that, I don't know, like, maybe someone was wounded or something. Like, she essentially hesitated to leave.
Okay.
So maybe there was, so I think the implication there was, like, some emotional connection or some right that she had to do, some reason that she still wanted to remain in the league.
Yeah.
And in her hesitation, that's when, I don't want to just call them, like, earth dragons or dark dragons, like...
I think they're fire dragons.
They're just, like, fire dragons. That's just the generic dragons. That's when they, took her for her phones. And mugged her. Dumped her.
Yeah. We don't see any other types of dragons in this game other than we hear about the divine dragons, and I guess Faye is the divine dragon.
Yeah.
And then the fire dragons are the only other types of dragons that we see. So, yeah, but we can infer from other games that there probably were earth dragons and dark dragons and ice dragons and mage dragons, etc. But they're all dead. So, yeah, after Idun was forced to become the demon dragon and started making a bunch of war dragons, humans realized that they could not win the war of attrition anymore. So they decided to pivot their efforts into making the divine weapons as we see them. It's not explained how they made them. They just made really, really powerful weapons. And the strongest among them was the Sword of Seals, or the Binding Blade, which we'll talk about. It comes more relevant later on. But yes, so they made all these weapons, and with them they just started fucking the dragon's shit up like a lot. They just absolutely slaughtered them. And there was a part where they said, I'm trying to remember when they became humans, like when the dragons entered human form. I think it was the ending winter. It was after the ending winter.
Yeah, after the scouring, more or less, because of they essentially needed to go into low power mode. Because I think the scouring essentially drained so much energy.
Yeah, it was basically the divine weapons fighting against the energy that the dragons were creating. It warped the fabric of reality, and it caused ecological disasters. What do they say? Like snow falls in summer, the stars shine during the day. It was a fucking mess. Dogs and cats living together. It's mass hysteria.
They created global warming.
On God. And this is more taking lore from the rest of the series. But we do know, I believe it's confirmed, it might be in like the Arcanea games or something, but dragons need a certain amount of like magical energy in the air to live. And if they don't get enough of it, then they'll turn into mindless monsters like we see in like Gaiden.
That's they can essentially degrade.
Yes.
From living so long. They need some form of energy, which they typically store in the Dragonstone.
Mm-hmm. So it was at this point after the ending winter that the dragons were not able to get that energy that they needed to maintain their dragon form, and so they decided to turn into humans and store their energy in their Dragonstones. And at that point, the war was over. They were so weak, like human dragons in human form are even weaker than like actual humans. So at that point, there was no chance of them winning anymore, and the humans slaughtered everybody.
Have you like you literally look at the pre-Dragonstone stats?
Yeah,
that's god awful for these guys.
Yeah, 100%. There's a nice little I guess reveal here. When they're talking about the divine weapons and how they caused the ending winter, Roy says, "Well, I thought it was the dragons that caused the ending winter. It was the energy from the dragons that caused the ending winter, and it was all your guys' fault." And Jan said that's very much like humans to paint us as the bad guys in the legend. And I mean, to be fair, the dragons obviously weren't innocent because of what they did to Idu and things like that, but humans started the war. That's the important thing to remember, is that humans started it. We have no idea why. It's never explained why humans started this war, but honestly, I can kind of sympathize with the dragons here, because they were basically, if they didn't do this, they would have just gone extinct. And that's what ended up happening anyway. So I can't be too mad at the dragons, considering that humans kind of painted them into a corner a little bit. But
yeah, I mean, I feel like that's not too much of a plot twist, because like literally the opening crawl, like it doesn't tell you everything, but it does tell you specifically that man started the war against dragons, which this game kind of gets like ripped as a FE3 clone, but it is like kind of an actual like interesting difference where generally like in 1, 2, and 3, like the dragons are essentially like the evil ones because of like degradation, like they've degraded, like you mentioned, and just want to like take over humanity or subjugate it. But in this one, it's like, oh, man is kind of culpable. Man kind of had some responsibility here. It's not all the dragon's fault.
Absolutely. That was not. I did deviate off topic a little bit, but that was not what I was referring to as the plot twist. The plot twist that I think is interesting.
Yeah,
is that,
it's not really a plot twist because you kind of know it right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is already an interesting foot to start the story out on. But the divine weapons. It turns out that the divine weapons were at least partially responsible for causing the ending winter and disrupting the fabric of reality. So they sealed the weapons away, which we do see in the game, but you don't really think about it in the moment, right? Because it's like, okay, it's a video game. You know, the legendary ancient weapons are always going to be sealed away, and there's usually some trite, boring explanation for it, like, they didn't want them to fall into the wrong hands, or they didn't want, bandits to come across them and sell them or whatever. But the reasoning being the traps and the seals were there to just make it so that nobody could ever use them again. I think that's an interesting, again, maybe reveal is overselling it a little bit, but like recontextualization of that information that you wouldn't think twice about normally.
Yeah, and you could probably extrapolate it to say like, oh, the lingering effects of keeping this weapon in this area for so long is could potentially be what is creating these traps. Like for example, in 8X, say like the turbulent like volcanic activity could be just because like Durandal is like warping this shrine, and kind of making it more lava-y than usual. Or I think probably the biggest example is like 16X with those the raining arrows of light that I talked shit about earlier. Yeah. But like it is kind of interesting. It's like they call it like a pretty much like an act of God in that chapter, but like if you kind of think about it with like the information that the divine weapons kind of warp the environment around them, like maybe it's just like kind of the effects of like Ariel going off, like kind of on their own. There's another knock against the K20X because like, okay, the way Malager rips the environment is just by like, spawning dudes out of random huts, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
so like I think I think it's implied to be a wind bow, so I think they just couldn't think of one for like wind.
Yeah, I mean they could have probably, I guess, done the same thing that they did. They could have done the Conquest Chapter 20 gimmick. Oh,
yeah, that
would have.
They should have. They should have just ported that to Binding Blade. That would be amazing.
True. Absolutely.
What? It also, I think the funny implication for 21X is like, oh, why are there dragons in chests? Like, oh, because it's the Binding Blade.
What do you mean?
So the Binding Blade like binds dragons.
Oh.
So why do you think there are just randomly dragons in chests in the Binding Blade map?
Because the dragons happen upon it, and the Binding Blade like seals them up.
Yeah. Or something like that.
Well, I was actually going to mention that too. I like that explanation better, I think, because it's funny. But I'm wondering if the actual explanation is that those dragons weren't put there by Burn. What if they were put there, like, by the people who sealed away the weapons, just as like a defense mechanism?
Yeah, I mean, maybe Harmut fought more than just a Dune.
Yeah.
And sealed more than just a Dune.
Yeah.
In just like a random chest. I would imagine if it wasn't on the GBA and they had more time, then maybe like you'd probably do a more interesting looking chest for that.
Yeah. But alas.
If that's the actual implication, I don't know, because the plot doesn't actually mention
I feel
that
like
gameplay element, I don't think.
I feel like the actual answer is that they just didn't give a shit. They didn't think about it, but I like the speculation.
I think there is a through line there, but like I don't know if they thought more than like, oh, it's the binding blade and the binding blade seals dragons. So what if we had could potentially happen upon dragons in chests or something?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if they thought about the lore of it, but I think there is a through line of like kind of the at least the idea of it springing off into a gimmick.
Yeah, that could be cool. Or that would be cool, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. But yeah, sorry, I just gotta find where I am in my notes. In case anyone was worried that you were gonna cause another ending winter, Jan says, "Don't worry, they're not as cool as they were before, so they're not gonna cause the end of the world again."
Yeah, I think that power kind of degrades after like X number of years. You kind of see that in some of the other weapons in the series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, after the humans fought back a bunch of the war dragons and a bunch of the regular dragons, they did end up finding Idun. And it is at that point that Hartmut takes out the Binding Blade, which apparently reflects the user's soul. I don't know what that means or how it was designed that way. I would love to see... I think the one thing that I would like to see the most in like a remake of this game is more Binding Blade lore. Like you know how they did like the memory prism flashbacks in like they did one for Milla and Duma and Echoes.
Yeah.
I would love to see a flashback to like the forging of the divine weapons and learning more about how they were made. Maybe like Hartmut had that one made in secret, saying he didn't tell the others about it. Or I want to know how you design a sword to reflect the wielder's soul.
Well, I mean, it's just some magic, but I think that like if you go that route, it could be like a genuinely interesting way to contextualize it. It's like if it can reflect your soul, then it might be able to like store memories of your soul or something.
Yeah, I mean he got his hands on when Roy first picked up the sword. He had like a flash of Hartmut's memories. It was very
right.
brief.
Yeah. You see like unhooded Idun for a second, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, the implication of this reflecting the wielder's soul thing is that Hartmut did not actually, possibly even subconsciously, did not want to kill Idun. He had heard about what happened, and he took pity on her, and so when he struck her down with the Binding Blade, he did not actually kill her. Instead, he was able to put her in a seal, and seal her away, basically, for a long, long, long time. Yeah, which I think is cool. I think Hartmut is an interesting character. I would love to... I know some of the fucking guys are in Heroes. Like, I think Elamine is in Heroes, isn't she?
There's not a ton. They don't do that like a ton, just because I feel like that doesn't sell as well as like actual characters from the game.
Yeah.
So they kind of like backed off on it and only do it like every 2 months or so. But of the 8 legends, I'm pretty sure it's just Element and Bramimond.
Oh, Bramimon's in there? Okay. Well, we do actually meet...
Yeah, he was added... he's more there for FE7 rather than 6, and is referencing the scenes that he shows up in 7. Yeah. Bramimond's actually kind of cool in that game because he's like voice acted by like the voice actors of all the different lords rather than having his like all 3 FE7 lords rather than having his own voice, and it's kind of like random which voice you get when like you use him.
That's cool.
Like each time he does an action, like a different one of the FE7 lords voices will come out.
That's awesome. I think Bramimond, and I might be getting ahead of myself here. I definitely am getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I think Bramimond is like the only element of FE7 that actually like enhances this game, as opposed to either being completely neutral or kind of like making this feel a little stupid in retrospect. I think Bramimond was a great inclusion in 7.
I'm not sure if that's 100% fair, but Bramimond is really cool, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll see. I might be being too harsh on 7. I'll have to take a look. It's been a while since I've played and paid attention to the story of that game. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. It's kind of hard to say since like most English, like pretty much every English Fire Emblem player is going to play 7 before 6. So it's hard to get in the mindset of a person that played 6 before 7.
Yes, and that is what I'm currently trying to do. I did play 6 first, so we'll see. In terms of hyper analyzing the story, so maybe that'll replicate the feeling a little bit.
I mean, I personally think like actually seeing the younger Zephiel kind of contextualizes him better than just
hearing about it.
Yeah, Guinevere dumping that on you.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. All right. I think then they weirdly pivot into Jan and fucking Zephiel, like how they got to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And
it also like kind of redundant after the ending scene of FV7.
Yeah. Which the translation patch really copies that word for word, which is kind of cool. It's a nice touch.
Yeah, I think that's a newer translation patch thing. The older one kind of is more vague about it, where the newer one uses exact words, which is cooler.
Mm-hmm. So there's a bit in here about where Idun was sealed away all that time, and we're pretty sure it's the Shrine of Seals, right? Like he was. She was.
I think so because they say with the blade and the Fire Emblem.
Yeah. So that means that when you go there in FE7, which is, I'm not saying this is a criticism, I just think it's a fun little thing. When you go there in FE7, you're just like chilling, like Idun's just chilling there, sealed away, which is funny.
If they remake 7, you should walk up to the Shrine of Seals and hear snoring. Like
snore.
You hear a fake. You hear a fake like honk me.
That would be epic.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so Zephiel read about Idun and decided to undo the seal because he hates humans and wanted dragons to take over the world. We've been over all this. We know Zephiel's motivations. That's the end of the story. You go up, Jan is the last boss, and you kill him. And, that's the end of the lore dump. This entire fucking chapter-long lore dump.
Yeah, pretty much.
How do you feel about both the story itself and how it's presented here?
I mean, I this is almost kind of getting into my general feelings about FE6, but I like the outline of the story. It's just that it's kind of more show rather than, or tell rather than show. Like, they obviously, I think I've gone into like the development cycle of this game, but it definitely feels like they had a good idea for the story, and there's a lot of good like the actual like text and like the Wikipedia crawl is pretty good, but like actually playing it, it's a lot of them just like dumping stuff on you, and like this is definitely a symptom of that. Is them pretty much just dumping the lore, which I guess fair on the GBA. It would be pretty tough for them to actually. I mean, like it could give you like flashback scenes that happen as you complete the map, rather than having just John like tell you it.
Yeah.
But I think for like an early GBA game, like I think that's fair for them to kind of just like have the assets that they have and just kind of have to tell you stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the execution could be a lot better. But
for sure.
The general outline I like. It'd probably be pretty cool with a remake, but I'm not holding my breath for that.
Yeah.
And that's generally how I feel about the story, but this is definitely like one of the main symptoms of it.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I will play devil's advocate for a second. I think that you're right. I think that they definitely could have made it more interesting in this chapter. But I think the fact that all of this information is withheld from you right until the end is interesting in its own way. I think it's a good use of the limited format of how they could tell the story, because I think that
Yeah.
having Roy for the vast majority of the game, only you are with him in that mindset of Dragon's
Yeah.
bad, like Dragon's bad, especially if in the context of the previous games, where dragons are typically the antagonists, and if they're like good dragons are usually not like particularly relevant. So yeah, I think that in that sense, I'm going to talk more about this probably next episode. But I think it works for what it is. I do think that I think in particular that idea that you suggested about having memories and flashbacks pop up, maybe like as Roy gets closer to Idun, like the Binding Blade kind of reacts to that and starts giving him more of Hartmut's memories. I think that would have been really awesome.
Yeah, that would have been a lot cooler than just like and a detail that I wanted to bring up that we didn't like actually touch on is like the whole time when John's lore dumping, it's like supposed to be a hologram of him, like he's like fucking Palpatine or something. Like, I can only do the hologram in this temple. It's like that's kind of like I don't know why they feel the need to explain like the cross map conversations, because Fire Emblem does that all the time, where like characters who are supposed to be across an entire battlefield are just like talking to each other like they're like right next to each other, even though they're supposed to be like on opposite sides of a like huge battlefield.
Yeah, no, that's
and it only really cares about it here, but
yeah, it goes into like a weird amount of detail where it's like Jan is like, I can project my image, and then but Roy's like, I thought you were so much weaker in human form than in dragon form, and he's like, well, yes, but in this temple I am as strong in human form as I am in dragon form, and therefore I can. It's like, why?
Yeah, it's like kind of a weird amount of like stuff to write around when like it like probably you don't really care. Like at this point, it's kind of just like about the thematic points. Mm-hmm. Like, if we're talking about like the Binding Blade being able to respond to the soul of the wielder, it's like, okay, this is just like a thematic thing. We don't really need to know exactly the ins and outs of how that works. Maybe it might be cool to like get details on like, oh, maybe the Fire Emblem came from somewhere that is like mystical, but like the specific need to know is just like, oh, the thematic relevance of like being nice has some kind of external effect. But yeah, that would have been a lot cooler if I like your idea of Roy seeing this through the memories or the like memories stored in the Fire Emblem, mm-hmm. rather than like John specifically explaining it to you.
Yeah.
Which, like, if they had more time on this game, would have been like a cool way to go about it. The actual text of them withholding this information until like the end and kind of being like, oh, the story you've been fed through, like history class is like bullshit and propaganda, which is
I'm sure glad
something interesting. I feel like it's interesting for Roy, which is like, especially since he's kind of been like the younger plucky hero is kind of just out of school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also sure glad that only happens in fiction. Man, yes. if that happened in real life, I don't know if I could take it, man.
That would never happen in real life. Everyone is telling the truth and has no agenda, and there's no need for propaganda.
Absolutely, there's no need. Yeah. So, I think we're pretty much in agreement on this. I think we both agree that it's a good story that's told reasonably well, but obviously leaves a lot to be desired in terms of its execution. But
it's kind of constrained by being an early GBA game,
and the fact that it was rushed,
and the fact that it was like rushed.
Yeah.
And they kind of just had to pull it out of the canceled Fire Emblem 64.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, that would have fucking sucked, probably. I'm just thinking, like...
That's Fire Emblem 64?
Fire Emblem 64, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's, like, one of the speculated reasons why Kaka left. He's like... He had
sucks,
pretty much... Yeah, he had so much ambition, but, like, making a fucking... RPG on the fucking N64, like in like the size of those cartridges, like there's a reason why Final Fantasy left for PlayStation after the Super Nintendo era.
Yeah.
And I imagine Fire Emblem was constrained in the same way.
Yeah, that would make sense. All right, that's the end of the chapter. In terms of gameplay, you beat Jan, you capture the throne. There's a little bit of a scene here where Faye is very sad. She is forced in this map. We never mentioned that, and it's never really like given a proper reason why until now. Because Faye needs to be around to hear this stuff. She gets really upset and says, "Well, if this guy's saying there's a whole lot of stuff that we didn't mention from Jan about like dragons are inherently different from humans and they can't live together in peace." And Faye heard all of that and is really sad. She's like, "Am I going to grow up to be evil? Are you going to have to kill me? I can't live with humans." And Roy's like, "No, that's not true. He's wrong, and I'm going to prove it to you because I don't want to kill Idun. After hearing her story, I've decided that I'm going to beat her with the Binding Blade, and we're going to save her, and we're going to help her." And that cheers Faye up substantially.
Yeah, I think Faye is used well in this scene. Like,
I agree.
Child characters are kind of a slippery slope, but I like them when they're kind of used to be like the innocent, kind of like don't 100% understand what's going on, but understand the emotions of it. And I think Faye is used well in this scene for that, or that scene for that.
I agree. And yeah, that's where the chapter ends. We skimmed through a lot. we talked a lot, but we also skimmed through a lot of the more particular details. I don't think there's anything there though that I have any interest in getting deeper into than we already did. So if you're good, I think we can move on to Endgame.
Yeah, I'm good. We pretty much talked about the big points. There's a lot of like kind of little fluff in there, but
yes. I need to double check. 1 second. My MGBA won't open. I just need to double check the name of the final chapter. No. Okay, there we go.
Is it not just? Oh, never mind. I thought it was just Endgame.
Oh, it's called.
But it's not.
It's called Beyond the Darkness. Final Beyond the Darkness.
Yeah.
Very basic setup, and this map is like weird. I don't know why this is considered a separate map to the last one, because it's really not any more involved than like the Fire Dragon chapter of fucking FE7 or the Fort Mortis chapter of FE8, but those are considered like Endgame Part 2, so I don't know why they distinguish between them in this one, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. Idun's there. Roy goes up to her and says, "You don't have to fight anymore." And she is pretty mindless. There's an implication here that she is like genuinely kind of loyal to Zephiel beyond just being a mindless servant, because he freed her. It's like very slight. She mentions that she was like in a never-ending dream of darkness until he came and got her out of it. So I think there is a part of her that genuinely feels the desire to be loyal to him. But it is mostly the fact that she is at this point, she doesn't have a soul, she doesn't have a mindless, she doesn't have a personality, so she's just kind of brainlessly following orders. And Zephiel's orders were to make as many dragons as possible and take over the world. So she's going to keep trying to do that.
Yeah, I mean that implication is like kind of confirmed in Heroes. Like, I'm not sure if you know about the like Ascended Idun, which is essentially like a post-game Idun after like a scene that we'll probably talk about later. But I mean, she mentions like she's still like, even it's pretty much like her like being restored to being a divine dragon again, getting her emotions back, and she still mentions like Zephiel in there. Specifically, like she says like stuff like His Highness may be gone, but I still carry on his like yearning for freedom. So I think there is some sort of like, there is still some sort of like emotional connection between the two.
That's cool.
Like even beyond like her kind of mindless instinct to like follow whoever her master is.
Yeah, that's neat. I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the like a lot of Fire Emblem Heroes stuff is fluff, but some of the like Ascended Heroes is actually cool, like adding to the lore.
Yeah.
And like it's Ascended Dune is probably the one I can point to and be like, yeah, if there's anything that like actually gets you more out of the story, that like this is one of those characters.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've considered going through Heroes stuff. Obviously, not playing it because I would never do such a thing. But there's like the level 40 quotes and like some of the heroes have more and shit. It's like I don't know if I want to fucking do that.
Yeah, that's not worth it. Like 90% of it is fluff. There's maybe like 10% that kind of actually adds to the characters.
Okay. So then, yeah, I guess I'll have to rely on you and on other guests who have played Heroes to jump in with stuff like that, because that is good and it's interesting. I'm glad that somebody mentioned it, because obviously I would have had no idea.
Yeah, that all is definitely like it's like really cute, even if it was like absolutely a menace when it dropped. like like one of those characters that just like is unkillable and annoying.
Yeah, no, I feel you. All right. I mean, this chapter is extremely straightforward. You walk up in a straight line. If you gave Roy a bunch of boots and you fed him enough kills and trained him up, then you can end this in one turn. But otherwise, you have some. There are like two. I don't know if this is any different on hard mode, but there are two Manikeets to start off, and they spawn one more at the beginning of every enemy phase, but they're like in really awkward positions where they can't really do anything. So it's extraordinarily easy.
Yeah, this is like the most infamously easy endgame probably in the series.
Yeah, I mean, like I think this might even be easier than like FE8 endgame, which is notoriously easy.
Yeah, I mean, in FE8 endgame, like you probably still need like a turn or two.
Mm-hmm.
This is like super easily one turnable.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's and there's at the beginning, you keep the same characters that you brought into the previous chapter. You keep them here, which is another piece of evidence why they maybe should have just been considered the same chapter. But anyway, everybody that you brought in has a quote. A little final battle quote, which is something that becomes something of a tradition in the series, and it's one that I really, really like. And maybe a little bit more than is earned, but I think it's really fucking cool. In this game in particular, pretty much everybody has like a really generic quote. Like I think like Ellen is like, "Say it, Elamine, please protect us," and Shin is like, "So we finally made it." It's stuff like that. Hugh has kind of a fun one. I'm pretty sure he's like, "We have to fight that thing," or something along those lines, which is funny. But the only one of my characters that I use that I actually wanted to draw attention to their final battle quote was Ray, because his quote is, "This is the demon dragon. Such power. Yes!" Which I just think is very funny. I'm like,
yeah,
why did you say
baby.
That?
That's what I've been waiting for. This is what it's all about. Woo.
Literally. I love Ray. I'm not gonna give away before next episode who my favorite character is, but I will easily give away the fact that he is at least in my top 5. I love Ray.
He's fun. I like him being like a edgy dork.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, yeah, I mean, not to bring up Heroes again, but Heroes definitely leans into it, which it's not really like a new thing, because like that's kind of the implication in 6, but it's nice with like voice acting too.
Yeah, no, totally, I get you. Alright. Idun is really easy. You can kill her with the legendary weapons. They do a good amount of damage. The Binding Blade does like... Did they like enhance... Are I don't know. Like,
I think it's less that they enhance it and more that it's like the only weapon. Like I think like generally the legendary weapons are effective against dragons, but only the Binding Blade is effective against Idun.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So that's probably why it feels a lot stronger than everything. Like all your other options is because it's
the only
like
one that's
actually effective.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think her stats are. Eh, I mean, her stats are high. It's just like Roy gets like a ton of promotion bonuses, and Binding Blade gives it like a good amount of stat bonuses. I don't think like strength or speed or anything, but it helps with like defense and res.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, it's still effective against her.
Yeah. So, it does a shitload of damage. You can easily kill her. If you kill, so Roy says, leave the final blow to me. You can actually kill her with other characters, and if you do, you will
Mm-hmm.
get what I refer to as the bad good ending, whereas like you
Yeah,
see
the
all the
good bad
content,
ending.
the good bad ending. You see all the content. Obviously, you get all the chapters and all the cutscenes, but you don't save the Dune at the end, which has kind of been reframed as kind of maybe the whole point of the game. And it's sadly like really identical. Like it doesn't. There's no exclusive content. There's no scene of Roy being like, "Man, if only I could save her" or whatever. It's just like the game proceeds as normal, which I think is a
Uh-huh.
little lame.
Well, you still get like the actual ending doesn't change, but you get a scene after. There's a scene that requires a Dune and Faye to be alive. That
Yeah,
is
well,
probably like my favorite scene in this game.
oh no, absolutely. Yeah, I do know that. I was just referring to like I wish there was a little bit more
The actual
dialogue.
ending, yeah,
I wish there was a little bit more dialogue
like
to
it was like,
reflect that you didn't save her.
yeah, that you could do better.
Yes, exactly. I think that would have been interesting, but anyway, it's lame. It's not really worth even. I save stated just to get both. I instead of having Roy land the final blow, I save stated and had like Shanna do it or something like that. But it was lame. It wasn't worth it. So, you just have Roy kill her with the Binding Blade. It's really easy, and that's the end of the chapter and the end of the game. The energy from the conflict causes the temple to start collapsing. In the ending where Idun survives, everybody runs away, but Roy stays behind for a minute to kind of get Idun on his back. Which I mean, I know he's like 14, isn't he? Like I don't know how I know he's like
Yeah,
a fighter and everything, but like it's
15.
15.
Yeah,
So
same difference.
basically the same thing. Yeah. So
But
Idun must be quite small.
yeah,
It's not a criticism or
I
anything. I
don't
just think
know.
it's funny.
I mean, like the Binding Blade has to get those dragons in those chests somehow. He
True.
probably could. He's probably like has her in his pocket or something.
Oh, I forgot to mention Shaman in the Dark. One of the best boss
Oh
themes in the
yeah,
entire series is
I
the.
wanted to bring that up too. Is like generally I don't like the GBA sound font, but
Mhm.
like some of these later boss themes go super hard. Like Shaman in the Dark is definitely like the biggest, like the probably one of the best songs in GBA.
Yeah,
The one against like John and like Zephiel and the generals are also very good.
definitely. I agree. I'm probably gonna do Shaman in the Dark for like the transitional music for this episode. So,
Nice.
you've already heard it, and if you somehow haven't played this game, then you now know what a fucking banger it is. They remix it also. There's like a music box version as well. That's also quite nice. Um,
Yeah, it's probably closest to like a lead motif in this game.
yeah.
And generally used with like a Dune.
All right, and then we see the aftermath of the conflict. Roy, commits to helping rebuild the continent. Fucking what's her name? Guinevere has a
Yeah.
scene where she's about to have her ascension ceremony, and she and Roy talk and have a
Mhm.
nice little conversation.
Yeah, that scene can vary based on if you supported him with Lolina.
Oh, okay, I didn't know
So
that.
there's a version of it where it's basically just like Roy like friend zoning Lolina.
Roy,
And then I mean they end up getting together, but it's
yeah,
like her being like kind of like awkward with him.
that's funny. I didn't know that. I'll have to look at that later.
Yeah.
I supported Shanna, so we'll talk a little bit about the implication of that on the character endings in a minute. But just to quickly go through the rest of it, I'm pretty sure. Honestly, I think if you got the good bad ending, I think that might literally be it. I think it's the only scene.
Yeah, the last scene just like gets cut.
Yeah. But if you did save Idun, then there's a scene with Roy where he goes to Arcadia and speaks with the Elder there. The Elder, apparently he brought Idun to Arcadia after everything happened, and the Elder says that he very nonchalantly mentions that they managed to restore her soul, which I want to know more about that. Like, how did he do that? But he did it somehow, I guess.
I'm probably like headcaning this and kind of just like ignoring that, but I feel like the implication is that like her soul is starting to be restored after being around people and like having them open up to him. Like she's starting to like feel emotions again.
That would make sense.
Which makes a lot more sense. Like it's kind of like what he's implying is that it's naturally happening rather than like, we used magic to restore her soul.
We just took it and we put it back in there.
Which, like, the scene, like, when the scene switches, kind of feels like it, because it's basically about, like, Idun's, like, still kind of being, emotionless, but starting to, like, kind of open up.
Yeah, well, how about, because I know you said you really like the scene, why don't you, the Elder just says that they're still waiting for her to, like, show more emotions, but they're hopeful that the process will continue smoothly. Why don't you explain what happens next?
Yeah, so basically the next scene is, Faye and Idun outside that little corner of Chapter 14, where the throne is.
Where we fought Randy.
Yeah, where you fought Randy Orlando. And they're basically just hanging out. They're like, Faye is showing her around and being like, this is what nature is, this is like what a tree is, there's fruit that grows on it, and then like she shakes the tree, like a fruit falls on her head, and then like Idun laughs at that, and it's like, wow, you laughed. Like, and then she gets like super excited, because like she started to show emotion again.
It's very cute.
Yeah, it's pretty cute. They have like this little bit where she like runs around her in like a square a couple times and then like leaves the scene.
Yeah.
So it's not like a super complicated scene, but it's like a really nice ending for Dune where it's like, okay, there is hope of her going back to she is like kind of the victim of the story. There is hope for her being restored. Which is, I think is like a really nice capstone to the story.
Yeah, I think in particular, I like the bit right after that, where she feels a warm breeze, and comments on it, which I think is a nice little touch. I think consistently, from the admittedly the little dialogue that we've seen from her, she's had this constant through line of being alone and being in the dark. Her battle theme, obviously, Shaman in the Dark. It reflects and her dialogue around that, her being sealed away for so long. It's this constant feeling of being alone and being in darkness, and to kind of contrast that to being in the warm, sunny, hot desert, which I think is
and her design has like the hood most of the time, and she only takes it off in like the Endgame, so kind of also a nice way. She wouldn't like feel a breeze like that.
Exactly.
So it is kind of like nicely symbolic.
Mm-hmm. It's cool.
Of her kind of opening up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, I think that's it for the story. Then we pivot into the character endings, which you only get 10. Well, you get Roy's ending, obviously, and then you get 10 full character endings for the characters who you brought into Endgame. So it'll say like, Shanna. Well, okay, maybe Shanna's a bad example, because for me, my Shanna ending was that she went to Heeeere and married Roy. But who else did I bring? Gonzalez. Gonzalez's ending is that he went back to his hometown and was greeted not by rocks but by the cheers of his fellow villagers or whatever. It's cute, and but for everybody you didn't bring to Endgame, you get like a 3 or 4 word phrase about what happened to them after the war, which is lame. I get that it encourages replay value, I guess, to bring different characters and see what happens, but I wish they would just give you endings for everybody.
Yeah, I'm a little bit conflicted about it, because I'm not sure if I like the I mean, I don't like the short character endings. Like, they basically tell you nothing. It's just like, returned to home and rebuilt.
Yeah.
Um,
Lived as an Austin.
I'm like, yeah, but when like every character has like the same ending, then it's like, the fucking Tony Snell image where it's like 0.0 assists, 20 minutes, and then it's like became the hero of their hometown.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay, man. So I'm like, the short ending is kind of just like wasting my time. If they wanted to go that route, like I feel like they might as well just like have scrolled their battle stats and like not told me anything about them.
Yeah.
Just like got it over with pretty quick.
I agree.
But of those two, yeah, I prefer just seeing every character's endings because like, I mean, some people just play these games once and that's perfectly fine.
Definitely. I do think it's interesting that it's reflective of the fact that you probably... I mean, I don't think this is strictly true, but I think in theory, if you didn't bring a character to Endgame, you're probably not as invested in them. But realistically, like, considering, like, you can probably... For most of the game, you can use a team of, like, 15 characters, right? And then you suddenly have to cut out 5 of them.
Yeah, the ending has a lot less slots than, say, like, Chapter 21 or 23.
Yeah, definitely.
So, it's not, you definitely could have invested in people that did not make it to Endgame. Which, like, it's probably the reason why they're going through is that there's probably pretty significant stats for some of the people that probably fell off earlier.
Yeah, like Deke and stuff like that.
Yeah, like Deke or Alan or definitely Marcus.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or like Zealot, yeah. They were falling off, but had probably pretty significant number of battles.
Right. I lost my train of thought. Oh, yes. So, the character endings, what I find kind of lame about this, and I'm not saying that every Fire Emblem game has to have, like, a bunch of these or whatever, but I really like how in some of the later games, your endings will change depending on who they A-supported with. There'll be romance endings, and then, of course, just like, these guys were friends forever endings, which I think is interesting, or that they did something together after the war. In this game, that even though there are supports with very clear romantic implications, like Tate and Klein, for example, I think is a good one. Their only ending that is affected by your supports is whoever Roy marries, which there are six characters that he can marry.
Yeah.
So, I wish that there were more of those.
That does kind of feel like a we rushed this type deal.
True.
but then again, like, Engage was definitely not rushed, but it also has the same thing going on.
Oh, does it? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Engage doesn't have paired endings beyond the Heeeere paired ending.
Huh. Weird. It's a minor thing.
Which I guess in that case it was just like them, like, it like theoretically kind of like being constrained on the scope just to make sure they got it out on an anniversary, but they didn't get it out for the anniversary.
Yeah. That's fair. Okay. Yeah, that is pretty much all there is to say, at least as far as I can reckon, about Fire Emblem The Binding Blade. At least for now. Obviously, we're going to do a full wrap-up thing. There's some extras. After you beat the game, you unlock some extras in the extras menu. We were talking about the fucking trial maps, but I'm just going to open up the extras menu right now. There's trial maps, there's Link Arena, which...
Yeah, you want to battle right now, bro?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you... Does GBA have, like, net play? That'd be funny.
Probably somehow.
Yeah, that'd be cool, actually. Link Arena,
like,
basically...
I imagine the Pokemon fans have figured it out.
Yeah, I'm sure. Link Arena is a concept introduced in the GBA, and I think they only carried it around for a couple of entries. I think it was only the GBA games, and they mostly dropped it, where you could take characters from your playthrough, and you could take another character, or another person with characters from their playthrough, and you could connect them with your link cable or whatever, and you could just use your characters together to fight, which I think is a fun concept. Unfortunately, obviously, with the limitations of GBA multiplayer, it never really got off the ground at all.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think that might be their first, like, what would Six's Link Arena be like their first foray into attempting to do some kind of like multiplayer like
I think so.
Fire Emblem experience?
I think
and like
so.
they're still they tried so desperately to make they keep trying so desperately to make that work. In like the DS and 3DS and even in like Three Houses and Engage to an extent. Like I think Three Houses there's no like competition, but like Engage I think there's like multiplayer raids. I don't know. I've literally never tried it because like it doesn't work. Like the experience is so heavily attuned to like the single player and fighting against the like AI opponents that it's like like if I like looking at footage of like Fates like the Fates battles, like the actual multiplayer battles, like
people
looks like a nightmare.
People figured out how to break that shit in like a week. It's like whoever I think the thing about the Fates multiplayer was always like whoever moves first loses. Basically, whoever dares to make the first move.
Fire Emblem isn't so deep. Yeah, Fire Emblem isn't so deep where it's not like a soft game.
Yeah,
more or less.
Yeah, absolutely.
The closest is probably Heroes, which works, but also is like an annoying nightmare. Because like skills just like keep getting better and better. You gotta buy the new skills.
Mm-hmm. I do like the Link Arena for what it is, just because it's like
the Link Arena is like it's in the extra menus. It's an extra. It's a novelty.
Yeah, it's humble and like a fun little bonus.
Yeah.
There's also the sound room.
I can see if.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I can see if my Lilina can kick your Lilina's ass.
You can see if my Lilina was pretty good. You should see if your Lilina can kick my Lou's ass, which the answer is probably yes, but man,
probably not.
I had the fucking best Lou of all time.
And I had like a pretty like decent Lilina.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't the best Lilina ever.
Yes, for sure. There's also the sound room, which is just I think later games actually improved on this a little bit, even later like GBA games. But there was it's just a mode where you can listen to music, but you have to scroll through the music one at a time, which is annoying. As opposed to later games, I think you could like scroll through like a 4 wide menu or whatever.
Yeah, and this is like. Nintendo's like, you got your sound room right here. Why do you need this on Spotify?
Exactly, or fucking YouTube. They keep taking it down.
Yeah.
But it's a fun little thing to do. Obviously this is when did this game come out? It was like 2001, right, or 2002?
Yeah, 2001. So actually, it might have been I think it was supposed to come out in like 2001. It might come out in 2002.
So this was before YouTube and before even like the full advent of the internet, as we would know it, like later in the decade. So, I think it's a nice little inclusion.
Yeah, it's a nice inclusion. I don't think it did come out in 2002, but I think by 2002 it's not like unheard of to have sound rooms. Mm-hmm. But it's nice that it's here. I don't know if 4th Thracia had that.
Yeah, I don't think they did actually, but I could be wrong about that.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? I have a hunch that maybe it did. Thracia, at least, but I don't know. I'd have to check, but it's not particularly relevant, so I'll probably check later. Yeah, I mean that's
apparently at least Thracia did, so it's not like new to the series.
Okay, yeah, but Thracia's bad and stinky, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, okay. I think the most interesting thing about the sound rooms is that they also have CGs up in there.
Yeah,
I don't think all of them you see in the story.
No, yeah, I think there's one of Roy holding up the binding blade that isn't in the story at all. A couple of them are in the credits, but even
some of them are in the credits.
Yeah, I don't think even all of those were. So.
Yeah, you totally fought Zephyr with Roy, right?
Definitely.
That's totally what you did. That's why we're showing you this.
Yeah, absolutely. We at least know that Roy was in the throne room, so it's possible.
He was. It's an image of him in the back while like Milady or like Percival just is actually running up on him.
Yeah.
Like he's just posing for the camera.
Literally. Okay. Now, unless you have anything to say that you don't think is better to save until next episode, I think that's pretty much all that I had. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else either.
Okay. Well, in that case, it was wonderful talking about these maps with you, Soup, and I hope
Yep.
that I look forward to kind of wrapping up this game with you going forward.
Yep, always a pleasure. Looking forward to wrapping it up.
All right, fantastic. Well, in that case, I hope you have a great rest of your day, Soup, and I will. I'll see you. I'll see you later.
Thanks, you too, man.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
As always, a pleasure to have Mr. Super User Person on, and yeah, we'll include him back again for the finale wrap up episode. So, looking forward to that. Okay, map gauntlet time. Sorry, Soup. I hate to talk shit about your favorite map right after you walk out, but I don't think I like 20. I like 24 for the story, but if I'm just factoring in the gameplay and any like gameplay story integration, I think that it's probably not. I don't think it's bad. I think it's fun and engaging in its own way. But I did legitimately mean when I agreed with him about the whole victory lap catharsis of killing a bunch of dragons. I wish that I had mentioned this while he was still on, but I blanked on it for a minute. The fact that you have to, throughout the entire game up to this point, the dragons are so strong and they're such pains in the ass to deal with, since like they'll one shot a lot of your guys, and you have to be careful. They do a shitload of damage, so killing them in one round of combat is basically impossible early on. You have to gang up on them with a few guys. It's cool, and then to have the tables turn and have you be the one fully in control, I think is a nice change of pace. But with that said, I think Chapter 23 is my favorite, and not better than Chapter 21. Or sorry, not better than Chapter 11A, which is the Hero of the Western Isles. So, yeah, as I had predicted for a few episodes now, Chapter 11A is my favorite chapter in the game. A few really close contenders, and this is one that I may honestly change my mind on later down the road, but I think there's a couple of really great chapters in here. I really like chapter 16, chapter 7, I think are probably the other two major contenders. But overall, I think chapter 11A is just so much fun, being able or having to really hit the gas to get all the items and make sure that none of the villages get destroyed. And there's a lot of fun side objectives. Recruiting Echidna is fun. It's a good map, and I think it's the best in the entire game for me personally. This episode is already going on for very long, so I'm going to quickly check news and see if there's anything. And there is absolutely fucking nothing, as usual, because goddamn, we can't get shit in this series. No, I'm just kidding. FE4 remake, right, guys? Copium. Did I already make that joke? I think the last episode went out after the direct. Yeah, I definitely did. So, doesn't matter. I don't really have anything else going on that I want to talk about. I got Story of Seasons, Wonderful Life. I'm a big Harvest Moon fan, so that's cool. I've been enjoying that. But otherwise, it's just more Trails of Cold Steel 3. And nothing else. So, that's all I really have to say. Nothing else going on in my sphere. And no news. So, without further ado, I think we can end the episode. And how have I done this for 35 goddamn episodes and I still am terrible at segueing into the ending sequence? Maybe one day, maybe by episode 100, I'll have figured it out. But I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.